Hey, what's up, guys? This is TBone here. Welcome back to another episode of playing Legendary Game of Heroes, where today I'm going to be talking about the ultimate forms from this past season, the Obsidian Ankh season. I'm going to be doing a ranking of the ultimate forms, so that if you have seasonal coins that you've been saving up for and you aren't sure what you should go after, hopefully this will help you make a decision. So we're going to go into the Obsidian Ankh season page, and in here, if you scroll down to where it says ultimate, click on that, and then it will take you to the past ultimate forms page where you can access all of the ultimate forms that you could forge using your coins. So I'm going to start from the bottom and I'm going to work my way up. So I would say that this particular season, both of the Slayer decks to me just haven't been quite comparable to the Commander decks. So these two would actually be the ones that I would stay away from. And so coming in at number 5 for me is the Dark Slayer, which is the Usurpers of Fortune, the Noble Killer. So this deck and the Light Slayer deck are very similar in that they create gems and then they do increase more power gems based on intensity. In this case, it's 150 Noble Killer intensity, and you can create more for every 150. And it also increases the Noble Killer attack. So this increases attack by 100%, and then it goes up by 1 for every 30. It sounds good, but honestly, in practice, what we've seen is just that this amount of attack boost just isn't quite enough anymore. For the Slayer events nowadays, with the Prestige 5, you can't really you don't really notice this attack boost much at all. Especially when you compare it to other decks that could be boosted by the commander cards that give you a lot higher boost. This just doesn't cut it anymore for me. And besides the attack boost based on intensity, it doesn't really have anything else. It does have a passive that gives you a damage reduction of 10%, but it's not something that really is worth spending on. And in general, Slayer decks are harder to really take advantage of it outside of its fan. So for me, I think that it's number 5, even though they do kind of come close. And the reason why for me the Light Slayer deck, Astral Anomalies, comes in number 4 is because of its revive ability. So it does give you a revive. So if you throw this card in your Light Slayer deck or your Light team, you do get a free revive, which can come in handy because instead of dying, you not only survive, but you get additional chaotic intensity and you also heal. So you could potentially revive with full health for additional full attack. So there is more utility in this case. So for me, I think that this deck actually will have less damage overall, because if you look at this battle skill, what it does is increases the attack by 60%. So it's lower than the Dark Noble Killer deck, and it only increases one by 1 for every 20. And so this deck will have a slower growth for attack boost overall compared to the Dark one, but because of the fact that it does have the passive ability for revive, I think that it edges out and comes in at number 4 for me. However, having said all that, these two Slayer decks are ones that I would generally try to stay away from, just because you have better options in the Commander decks. So when it comes to Commander decks, which ones are the best ones? And I would say that they are all kind of these are all pretty good. So all the Commander decks honestly are relatively good, but I think that the one that comes in number 3 for me in terms of the Commander, the whole deck, and really the bottom of the 3 Commander decks, to me would be the current Fire Beast Killer, the Flamebound Taurus. That's not to say it's a bad deck, however. So the thing about this deck is that there is 0 attack boost or damage boost, so there is really no utility outside of this event for this deck to truly be useful. What is nice is that this deck is very good for the current event. And so what I will say is, if you compare all of the if you compare the ultimate forms for all of the Commander decks, this one for me does come in number 3, but if you're looking to do well in the current event, this one is worth getting. Okay, and so it's sort of a relative, placement of what I think the ranking should be. But this deck does well in the event for Crusade events because of its ability to create power gems over 4 turns with a 3-turn cooldown. So we haven't seen this type of deck before, and this is one of the decks that that really sort of provides you this turn after turn steady damage output. And so within this event, it'll do really well. However, once you take it outside of the event, the only time that this deck would really do well would be if you place it with another beast killer deck, because this sort of mechanic also requires you to have really high beast intensity. So you can't take this deck and put it into another fire deck that requires a different intensity type and expect to get the same kind of power gem output. And because there is no damage boost, you can't really take advantage of this. And so in terms of utility, this deck comes for me as the bottom in terms of the commander decks. But for this particular event, if you're not doing well, if you find that you are struggling, this deck will help you in the current event. So if you're not looking ahead, I would go with this deck right now so that you can enjoy the event and do well in your placement. And I've already made a video on how you can use this deck, so take a look at that for details as well. So what are the top 2 decks to get then? Well, I think that they're kind of close for me, and I've had to think about this one a little bit. And to be honest, I think both of these are good choices. However, number 2 for me ultimately came down to the Earth Commander deck, Visions of the Void. So it's not to say that it's not, not necessarily as good as the water one, but I think that there's something about the water one that edges it out, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So Visions of the Void, what this card will give you is it does give you the power gems, and it gives you an additional power gem for every 200 beast killing intensity. So it's a little bit slow. In terms of the build up to it, it is a little bit slow. However, it has a really cool passive ability where you destroy all of the non-earth gems in the beginning of the turn, and you have an increased chance of dropping earth gems. So even though you may be building up the power gems a little bit slowly over time, in the beginning, you're likely to get a lot more power gems, a lot more gems just in general on the board at the beginning of every single turn, and it is very useful in a lot of situations. And what I've noticed is when I used it as an ally, it does provide a lot of utility also, and so this is a good deck that could be used, and also in the future for when you have a Beast Killer Slayer deck. This card can give you additional boost as well because it does give you a damage boost. So this is a damage boost deck, and the maximum damage boost you can get from this card is going to be based on the number of gems you have on the board. So it's 2% for every earth gem on the board. So technically you could potentially get a 70% damage boost based on this card every time you activate the battle skill. So this is a battle skill based attack boost rather than a passive damage boost. So you can only get this damage boost if you activate as well. So that means it's a 3-turn cooldown for the boost here, and so you don't get it all the time. You get it every 3 turns, but it's nice because it's not just attack boost, it's damage boost, which is a lot better than the regular attack boost. It is limited by the number of gems, so that's why it's capped at 70%. However, with the Gem Destroy and also the Gem Rain ability, you're always going to have a nice number of power gems on the board, or a number of gems for Earth that you can get at least over about 50%, I would say, of your damage boost. Okay, and so for me, I think that this comes in the number 2 just because it's not a passive damage boost, and I think that the Water Commander deck just has a little bit more in terms of the edge there. And so we can take a look here. This is what I think is the number 1 deck to get if you don't care about the current fire event and you're just looking for another deck. Then this is the one that I would go for. So the Fabled Sojourners, the Water Slayer Commander deck. It is, to me, the top one that comes in at the list here. So the battle skill, what it gives you is it gives you initial power gems to start, and it is also kind of slow with a 200 killer intensity requirement to get additional power gems. But then what happens is for every power gem that you get on the board, you will replicate that number the next turn. And so what you get is, if you can fill the board with power gems on turn 1, then immediately the next turn, you're going to get the same number of power gems as well. Okay. And it doesn't matter what kind of power gems you get. So you can get a full board power gem 1s. It will give you that same number of power gem 2s. So it's it's a downgrade if you can get a full board power gem 4s. But what's nice is you're guaranteed the same number of power gems the next turn as well. It is a little bit slow in terms of its ability. It is a 5-turn cooldown. But what's nice is it has a passive ability, so that every time you attack, you're going to increase the total damage done by your entire beast killer heroes by 50%. And so this is something that you can get every single turn. So every single turn, you're guaranteed to have a 50% damage increase. And so to me, this is what gives it the edge. You're getting the edge by always having the damage boost without any conditions. So as long as you attack, you don't need to worry about activating battle skill. You're going to get the boost here. And considering that the Water Slayer Beast Slayer deck is coming up next, I think this deck will immediately become useful in that situation. And so what I think too is you also can get additional charge of your skills every single turn. This will give you a 25% increase of your battle skills. This was something that we've kind of talked about. Like, for itself, it may not be useful, but imagine if you had a deck that had very low cooldown. Well, without needing to charge that particular that affinity. So if you have a mixed deck, for example, you can always charge your own skill. And so this is something that could be handy depending on the situation. So I think this deck has a lot more utility overall compared to the Earth Commander one. And so that's why, to me, it comes in at number 1. So hopefully this helps you make a decision on what you like to get. Now, in terms of just individual cards, okay, if you are looking to just get individual cards, I think that the Water Commander cards are a good choice. So of the two, which one should you get? Well, let's examine it quickly. All right. So Lion-Hearted Lady Dorothy, her ability gives you the number of power gems. Like, it counts the number of power gems on the board, and then it'll spawn that many the next turn. So if you're looking for a card that will give you a, sort of the extra power gems on the board for 2 turns, this is the card to get. Or you can go with the Armored Automaton, which is the card that has the passive ability that gives you 50% damage overall. And it also has the ability to create additional power gems with its battle skill, and it has a 1-turn cooldown. So I think that of the 2 cards, this is the one that would be this would give you the best options, because it gives you damage boost and it has a very low cooldown with power gems. So theoretically, with high intensity, you're going to have power gems every single turn, and you're going to be able to increase your damage as well. So in a fight that could take longer, you could theoretically get really, really good damage output from just with this card. And so this card will be useful for you on its own. And of course, if you can get the ultimate form, that'll be the best. But I personally think that the Armor Automaton is the best card to get, in my opinion, of this entire lot. Then the ones after that, I think that what's really good here is the Master Collection card of the green, the Earth Commander deck, and that would be the hypnagogic humanoid. The reason why I think this is the better card to get is because this is the card that gives you the gem destroy every single turn. Okay, and so what this will give you is, it gives you the ability to clean out all of the non-needed cards. And again, as I mentioned, when I use this card as an ally, I found it to be useful because it really gives you the additional gems to work with, and it is also a card that can give you power gems. Compare that to the ultra rare card. So Awakened Dream Guardian. This is also a card that can give you power gems, but it's limited. So it does have the limited power gems, but what this gives you is it does give you the damage boost. Okay, and so it's kind of interesting because they sort of broke up the two, and I would say it depends on your preference. Actually, as I'm saying this, I recommended the Master Collection card, but honestly, I think if you just kind of want to look at it purely from a damage output perspective, it would be better to get the Awakened Dream Guardian. Similarly to why I recommended the Armored Automaton is because you're getting up to 70% damage. But like I said, from sort of that, the thing about this is it's not passive. It is an active skill that gives you the damage boost. So you have to actually activate the battle skill in order to benefit from it. Whereas the Master Collection card gets you that Gem Destroy every single turn passively. I personally prefer passive abilities over active abilities. And that's why it's not an automatic ultra rare card for me. Okay, the Awakened Dream Guardian, yes, it does give you that 70%, up to 70% damage boost, but it's not automatic. And so to me, that timing could sometimes become a little bit of a liability in your overall deck, but it's completely up to you. I think either one of those choices would be good. However, I do believe that the Armor Automaton is going to be the best way to go overall. Now, aside from those 4 cards, I don't know that I would go with any of these other ones. Except for the only other ones I would consider is potentially the King of Cinders, which is the card that gives you power gems for 4 turns. Okay, and so if you're looking for a deck that can help you with guild versus guild, for example, this could potentially be one. And if fire is your setup, then this could potentially have a place in guild versus guild. But I think that there's probably better options for you. However, this is just sort of like, I would say the one that is the runner-up of the runner-up, right? If you don't like the water or the earth versions for whatever reason, then the only card that I would recommend is King of Cinders. I wouldn't really recommend any of the cards from the Slayer deck, to be honest with you. And so that is my recommendation for the deck here. Again, the top 2 are going to be the Water Commander and then the Earth Commander. My personal favorite is the Water Commander deck, and my personal choice for the card to get, if you don't have anything else, is the Armored Automaton from the Water Commander deck. All right, and so that's going to be it for me for today. Hopefully this helps you make a decision on what to do with your coins. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my assessment and why you prefer a different card or a different deck. And let's talk about it. Let's have a discussion. And hopefully you're having a great event. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.